This is the Rodney Bull Show, bringing you truth about money they never taught you. Now, here's your host, the man himself, Rodney Bull.
G'day, legends. And what's cracking, money stackers? Welcome back to the Rodney Bull Show. Today's guest is someone who's taken a proper step outside the traditional path and built real wealth doing it. Leo Young started out as Tesla's #1 regional salesperson. Pretty good achievement. Then moved into acquisition side of a $4.5 billion private equity fund. Just a couple of bucks, eh? So he's seen both sides of the game and how the system works and how big players actually invest. But instead of staying inside that world, he decided to step out of it and start building his own. Today, he's the founder and managing partner of Cornell Communities, focused on acquiring and operating manufactured housing communities, a space most people overlook, but one that produces serious cash flow and long-term value. He's been involved in over $50 million worth of deals. And what I like about Leo is this: he doesn't chase hype. He's focused on yield, systems, and building assets that actually pay you. So if you want to understand real estate and how it can move you forward through theory into real consistent income, this one's for you, folks. Leo Young, welcome to the show, mate.
Thanks for having me, Rodney. Very excited to be here.
Yeah, likewise, mate. It's a real pleasure to have you on, mate. A real pleasure to have you on. I was a bit worried that we weren't going to make this happen today because I'd lost your profile that I had for you, but I managed to track you down through a few other ways, and thankfully through modern technology, you got me.
That's right.
You got me messages and you responded to me, and it's really good. So we're here. We're
making it happen.
Yeah,
that's
man.
Right.
Bloody O. So after that little bit of a intro, Leo, could you just give us a little bit of a background on yourself, mate, so my listeners can understand where you're coming from, mate, and your history, that you didn't just start with a silver spoon in your mouth and walk into a bankroll full of money.
Yeah, so I think my story is interesting because I was never given a playbook or a ton of resources. I kind of had to figure things out as I went along. So, fundamentally, I studied finance and economics in college or university. And then afterwards, I kind of did the important thing, I thought at the time, to face my fears and go into sales. Because, when you studied finance, you're like, okay, well, you should work in a finance job. You should try to work at a bank or something. But no, I think at the time, like I was and I still am introverted. So I was like, I need to fix my skill. I need to get better at talking to people and, convey. Exactly. I think, I used to get like so nervous, like speaking up in class and stuff, giving presentations and like delivering a point. And like, I hated sales, but, for me, it was important and like, it seemed like a good risk to take at the time. And, it was an honor that I was presented with an opportunity to work for Tesla, because that was my dream company at the time. I actually grew up in Hong Kong and, saw the firsthand impact of pollution. I mean, it's terrible out there, like the pollution, right? So being able to be a part of a team that's effectively helping the world transition more to sustainable energy, that was really noble to me.
Yeah.
And afterwards, got into real estate because during that time, I mean, Tesla was a super intense company. Like everyone is working like 120% all day, every day. And I just got really burnt out. And I was trying to find a way. Yeah. I was trying to find a way to build some income that doesn't rely on me clocking in and out every day. So, stumbled upon real estate and I'm like, okay, I think the concept makes a lot of sense. Like I hear a lot of rich people invest in real estate, so why not? So then started investing as a passive investor. I did a ton of research up front. I became a small, like tiny minority owner into apartment buildings. I got the rent checks and that was the spark of something great. I mean, I was like, wow, I didn't need to do anything for this income, and basically a team would make my money work for me. So then I began my journey into real estate. I got more into it. I got my license. I was a real estate agent, so helping people buy and sell real estate. I wanted to learn and earn, and I didn't really say no to any kinds of transactions, so I learned a lot during that time. And then I worked for a private equity fund. on their acquisitions team, basically helping them deploy their capital, finding
Yep.
assets to purchase.
Okay.
So, started to understand like, okay, bringing it back around to like the finance education that I had, all these years later, finally putting it back to use. Understanding like how people view investments, like how these larger funds do it. And then afterwards, was approached by a mutual friend to he kind of walked me through the investment thesis of why manufactured housing communities, why affordable housing is such a compelling investment thesis for this period of the economic cycle.
Yeah.
So I listened to him, and two things stood out to me is that one, obviously, you have to make money because if it don't make dollars, it don't make sense, right?
Yeah.
So, so it was a great asset class. The demand for it stayed strong and it got stronger when
Okay.
the
Yeah.
economy gets bad because this is affordable housing. People are always going to want cheap
Yeah.
housing
Yeah.
and
I mean, the
it's not going
world's
to
in a
go
tough
anywhere.
place at the moment, eh? It really is. I don't
Exactly.
imagine from what I
Exactly.
read, your state over there, and we're in the same
Yeah.
place here, just serious housing shortages, and it's just out
Oh,
of reach
yeah.
for people. People just even
Yeah.
trying to
And
get into cheap, affordable housing is so tough.
we're super supply constrained and there's waiting lists for our communities, but so that was one thing that made a lot of sense. The second thing is that I get to be the the group that essentially improves the quality of living for these communities that we manage because manufactured housing communities, mobile home parks, trailer parks, however you know them to be, it's a very unique asset class in the sense that they're not approving any more of these. The
Okay.
government doesn't really like them. It doesn't make financial sense to approve them. So the existing ones, they're really old. They're like 50, 70 plus years old. So what happens is they either get worse and worse and worse to the point that they get condemned and people get displaced, people lose their housing, a ton of people lose their housing, or you put in the money, the necessary repairs, and you keep that going. So, we chose the latter because we want to continue offering affordable housing. And for me, like I'm very mission driven. So that really resonated with me. So, here we are, very fortunate, 500 units later, like we built out a company and, helping investors make money and also providing affordable housing to the communities. So, very blessed to be here and the best is yet to come.
Yeah. Geez, that's awesome, mate. Thanks for that, eh? That's a good bit of a rundown there. Really is. So, you've seen both sides of the game, mate, and being from Tesla's top salesperson and into the $4.5 billion private equity funds. What what led you to that space to get into the affordable housing part of it, mate? Like what really drew you into that? Is it something from your own history, mate, or
Yeah, I think it was more so the mission aspect of it. I think you can make money anywhere. You can make money doing anything, right? But for you, for me as a person, I want to put my time and effort into a cause that I care about. And affordable housing, it's not necessarily something that is like near and dear to me per se, but it's more so like an important mission that I think not enough people dedicate time to. I think there's so much misunderstanding about how it works, how it should work. But hey, we're doing what we can and we're actually taking action. We're actually providing affordable housing to all these families. We don't just talk about it. We take action.
it's awesome, mate. That's very commendable. That's very because it's a big part needed in society, unfortunately, because the wealth gap between the rich
Yeah.
and the poor is just getting bigger and bigger every day,
Yeah, for
and
sure.
it's becoming a real problem. It really is.
Yeah.
So that's
Yeah.
that's that's fantastic, mate. I tip my hat to you
Mhm.
proper. That's awesome.
Yeah. Thank you.
Really, really good job. It's something that interests me too, mate. Because like I
Mm.
got young adult children, and
Mm.
it's been tough for them to try and even get out of home to find a rental. Let alone to
Yeah.
have the chance to try and get into buying a first home buyer's property.
Mm.
Where you're starting at the bottom of the ladder, and over time you work your way up into something better. So yeah,
Yeah.
it's something that I'd like to get into for along the same reasons, mate. Obviously
Yeah.
to make money, because like you said, if it doesn't make money, it doesn't make sense, and you can't help
Yeah.
anybody if you don't have a full cup to pour from
That's
yourself.
right.
So
That's right.
you got to
And
work towards that.
yeah, Rodney, you hit on an interesting point in that rent is becoming more and more and more, and I think people like to some people like to isolate it, and like make these characterizations that's like not necessarily true about like, landlords being like, oh, they're like greedy or something like that. But, I think being in the space and like talking to all sorts of operators of large companies, small companies, and everything in between, like you kind of understand like how the mechanics actually work. So one of my favorite books is this thing is a book called Thinking in Systems by Donella Meadows. She's
Okay.
this MIT trained researcher. She wrote this book basically that in the world that we live in, it's all systems. It's not like a vacuum. It's not like there's a single source that like, hey, if we reduce rent, nothing's gonna happen, nothing bad's gonna happen. Like it's a consequence, right? So, for example, like when you're operating property, when you buy it, the government might increase your taxes on you. So when you increase your taxes, that increases your costs. Or during COVID, as we know, during COVID, the supply chain was all messed up. People started charging a lot more for
Yeah.
supplies, or labor costs go up. I mean, which is great for the people, right? People are getting paid more.
Yeah.
But when people get paid more, then things start to cost more expensive. And then, the cost to run this business, the business of housing, goes up too. So, it has to go somewhere. And, obviously like rent is just like one way to pass along the cost. But the other thing is, speaking of finances, investments, like how do you kind of navigate this world? It's interesting in the sense that what the financial playbook that we used 50 years ago is different than today.
Oh yeah, big
And
time. It's changed so
people,
much, eh? And a lot of people just
exactly,
haven't realised how much it's changed. Yeah,
exactly.
been a big learning curve
And
for me, mate.
yeah, I was one of those people. I hated the subscription economy. I hate all the subscriptions that I have. But also, I realize I'm powerless to change it. I can only be a standout for so long, or a holdout. But, eventually it comes along and you just have to adapt to it. And, what I'm hearing, so, I'm in New York City and I talk to a lot of people like of all walks of life, of wealth levels and things like that. And a lot of people are realizing, well, hey, like at least in America, maybe buying a single family home isn't the best way to build wealth. I mean, it really depends, right? Like that story is not as compelling anymore. The risk to reward is off. So, the people in New York, they're like, yeah, I mean, I continue to rent and I invest. I get such better returns investing, and it's less risk because my name is not on the mortgage, right? That the bank's not coming after me if something goes wrong. So, I think the answer lies somewhere in between. Is like you have to figure out what makes sense in today's playing field. You know, I think not enough people stop and kind of figure out like what the terrain is, so they don't know how to navigate it.
Yeah. No, well said, mate. Well said. I agree completely. It's a sad thing in a lot of ways, that it's going down that road. I think because, you know, people had been sold that dream a long time ago. The American dream, the Australian dream, all around the world. To get own your own home, and it's a thing to really good thing to aspire to. I think, myself, but we've been taken down that road, that rentership road, and like you said, subscription economy. You just rent everything. But
Yeah.
through my learnings, I think that it's probably, I've learned a fair bit from bloke from your country called Robert Kiyosaki, who I
Yes.
find to be one hell of a mentor. Like a lot of people struggle with what he teaches and how he teaches, but I quite like his the way that he goes about it and his bluntness, because I'm pretty blunt myself. But um,
Yeah.
I think that aspect of it makes a lot of sense, that you got to look at it the right way, that to buy your own home, and if you're looking to do that first up off the bat, your home isn't necessarily an asset. It's more of a liability than it is an asset, to be truthful. So it's
Yeah.
probably in your best interest to look to invest first, and build some wealth, and get that passive income flowing through investing. And if you can do it like Kiyosaki's done through property and you're doing yourself. Same
Hmm.
thing, helps a lot of people. But if you do that and you get that to that point where you've got enough passive income coming through that, then you can buy your own home, and
Sure.
that passive income will pay for that for you,
Yeah.
and you can carry that liability of your own home, because a mortgage, it comes from a French word called death pledge, like it's
Mm.
locks you in for life,
Oh
and
yeah.
but we're just not educated about it, about how it all works, and that's the problem.
Yeah, and I think like there is no universal right or wrong with these things. Like what I said earlier is it really depends on the terrain that you're in, right? If you're in a big city like New York City, like it really doesn't make sense financially to invest in a home like that you own. Obviously, it's not financial advice, but like if you run the numbers, just simple example, it costs about 60% more to buy your own home than it does to rent. So why not rent, save that money, and invest it? So that's what a lot of people here do. But if you're in the Midwest or if you're in a different country, the situation might be different. So the important takeaway is more so learn the terrain that you're in, try to figure out where the opportunities are, and figure out how to reach your goal based on what the terrain is.
Yep. No, well said, mate. Well said. So in regards to affordable housing, Leo, is it just the one style of thing that you're into, or did you start in a different space with that, mate? And as in
Yeah.
like single family
Mhm.
homes or multiplex units or something like that before you moved into what you're doing now?
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I've been involved in a few different kinds of real estate projects. So, like I mentioned earlier, I was a small minority owner in some apartment buildings, kind of learned how that worked. And then, I tried my hand at my own kind of building. I had like a small multifamily, like a 3 unit thing. Was managing some renovations, managing tenants, and like, just had a really bad tenant just make my life difficult, and I kind of realized like, wow, what's the return on my investment? Not I think people when they think investment they just think dollars, but they don't think time, they don't think peace of mind. So this person just made my life hard, and I was like, man, like all this for like a few $100 a month in cash flow, like, is it even worth it? Like something breaks and like that was your whole year's worth of cash flow. It's like, all right, there has to be a better solution. So, eventually, learning about just multifamily, like, commercial property, you have more units to spread out your cost again. So, let's say in our communities, like if we have 100 units, like if one tenant leaves, that's 1% of our income stream, as opposed to like if you have a three family, if one tenant leaves, that's 33%. And after
Difference, eh?
33%, yeah. And guess what? On the first of the month, the bank still needs to get paid their mortgage,
Yeah.
and bills still need to get paid. So the equation just turns south very quickly. And I think the sad part is that people get sold this dream that they don't fully dissect a little bit like before kind of fully committing to it. And that's sometimes what happens.
Yeah. Yeah, so again, it leads me back to the same place about education, mate. Like you need to do your due diligence and you need to get the education about it before you decide to get into any sort of investing. And like you just explained there, the different couple of different sectors that you got into, and like the problems and the risks that each different one has. So it led you on to something else, and you got experience and education along the way, and you got into the space that you're in now. I find it
Exactly.
interesting, mate. You were saying before about with your manufactured housing, mobile home parks and stuff, that they're not
Hmm.
approving any more of them. Like,
Yeah.
like what is the reasoning behind that? And so going forward with that, is it with what you're doing, can you only try to acquire existing ones that are out there and you just have to refurb them and get them up to a better
Yeah.
standard for people?
Yeah. There's like anything, there's usually multiple reasons, and a good kind of So I'm a philosopher at heart, and I like to think through things, and it's never like, oh, okay, this is the one finger to point to. It's usually like, okay, here's like a sort of consortium of potential issues, and like this factor is probably, causing 20% of this thing to happen. So what the forces causing it to be that they're not approving more mobile home parks is, a couple main ones are that it doesn't make financial sense for the municipalities, for the townships, for the cities to approve these kinds of projects because the reality is that it costs around $7,000 to $8,000 in tax revenue to service a single family living inside a mobile home park, whereas that family will only pay around $1,000 in tax revenue.
Okay.
So each family is putting a $6,000 to $7,000 per year burden on the local government per unit. And you multiply that out, and then you quickly start to see like cities are not very well funded. I mean, not all of them are well funded. I would say most are not. So they're like, well, this is a massive strain on our budget. Why would we want to lose more money? Why not just get some developer in here? They'll build their luxury apartment buildings that, they'll rent it out for super expensive, but they'll give us 10x or 20x in tax revenue. So then also leads to higher rents, right? Because,
Yeah, I mean, that's all
these
good and well
buildings,
for the
yeah,
government as such, but that doesn't help people in any way, shape, or form from the way I can see it, Leo. So,
exactly.
well, like, what's the fix there, mate? Because that doesn't help anyone. That just puts more people out on the street, in my eyes.
Right. And the thing is, when you're looking at these things, it's always a system. There is no like one person who like gains and everyone else loses it. It's always like some degree. For every force, there's a counter force. So like,
Yep.
yeah, I mean like more tax revenue means like more rents, in this case. But in other case, like, for us, like, well, hey, like we're putting a strain on the government's budget. Well, they don't really like it. They're going to find ways to kind of get you out. And, sometimes the condition of the properties just like deteriorate over the years. And it just gets to a point where, they can bring in, or like, it becomes like a health and safety concern. And like a ton of residents get displaced because they're told that it's no longer habitable. So that's like another kind of force that comes in as well. With rent control, people think it's all well and good. Hey, like we need to restrict the amount that the rent can go up, but the reality is that it limits the amount of profit, and it might actually turn into losing money for the property owners. So then, if they're losing money or if they're making less money, they're less inclined to be proactive in putting in necessary repairs. So, yeah, it's just all systems. There is no simple answer. I think we like to just the masses, they like to point towards certain things, but the reality is much more nuanced than that.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, it's definitely a lot deeper, and I'm learning more and more about it myself all the time, and even in this conversation now, mate.
Yeah.
But that's the problem. The way I see it, a lot of them systems, they're terribly flawed. And so it's just not working for the people at large. So how do you make it work, mate, with what you're doing in regards to being able to create affordable housing for people if the government at large seem to be so opposed to this style of affordable housing? If they're not going to
Yeah.
open up more areas like that for you to be able to build more like that, well, what is it that they're trying to point developers towards to be able to create affordable housing? Is it just multi-complex, big high-rise units, mate? And
Yeah.
same thing, that costs, I would imagine that it costs a lot more money than what it would to be able to put together a mobile home park. So,
Right.
like,
Right.
what's the
Yeah.
fix there?
Well, I think a couple interesting forces at play, right? When you approve like a new luxury apartment building, it's all great, and people can say like, hey, the government can designate a certain amount of units as affordable units, so it's much lower than market rents, call it. But that just pushes the burden of service or like of providing that housing to the
Yeah.
federal government. instead of the local government, right? So they like to push the buck along. They're like, hey, this massive printer, they're just going to keep printing money, so why not push it on them? So that is
Scary
what
part.
happens sometimes.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's basically swiping the credit card of the future generation, which kind of sucks. But as far as what we do and how we make it sustainable, so the one really cool part that protects us is that a lot of these properties they predate a lot of the zoning code in a lot of these cities. So as such, they're grandfathered in. So it's not like they could force us to stop doing what we're doing if there is no active condemnation. So as long as we maintain good living standards in the property, so we're giving people clean water, like a good place to live. Um, they let us continue. And we specifically look for existing units to revitalize for that reason. So a lot of these places, they're run by individual owners, and as such, they might live in the community themselves. We have people that we talk to, they live in the mobile home park for like their past 40 years. They know everyone. They play mahjong, they play cards, they play bingo with these
Yeah.
people. And
Yeah.
they're like, oh, I can't raise rent on them because I'm
Yeah.
gonna get an earful next time I go play cards with them. So as such, they're quite below the market rents. So what we do is we normalize the rents a little bit. It's still very low compared to what the market is. Just as an example, like if you're paying, call it $400 in your lot rent, a comparable house in that city might cost upwards of 1,500. So it might be three times as much as what you're paying here.
Yeah. Big
So,
difference.
even if you brought it up a little bit to create more budget to then reinvest into the community, it still makes sense. And yes, I mean, people are always going to grumble, but for the bigger picture, it allows the housing to sustain, and it's very important to do. And it's also important. Another dynamic is that so commercial property, mobile home parks is considered commercial real estate. Commercial real estate is
Okay.
usually valued as a profit, a function of the profit of it, right? Because Finance 101, you're trying to value a stream of income. You want to bring it to the present day. So if you make that stream of income more profitable, then the property itself becomes worth more and less attractive to developers. Because when developers they want to redevelop something, they want to get that land for as cheap as you can,
Yeah.
which
100%.
does happen. I'm like looking at deals, in like secondary markets, like good growing markets within the US, and it's what happens. People they don't keep up with rent raises, and like developers want to come in, put in their high-rise buildings and stuff, and like financially it makes sense for them to do that. And the consequence is just affordable housing is lost.
Yeah. Big time. Yeah. It's getting out of reach, mate. And through my learnings, mate, a big problem is one that you mentioned there before when it keeps getting pushed, the buck keeps getting passed and pushed further up the chain until it gets to the federal level. They just
Yeah.
the money's not there, so they're just
Right.
printing the money out of thin air, and that's
Yeah.
that's ultimately when you come to understand it, that's what's causing inflation. That
Yeah.
is the cause of inflation across all aspects of our lives, and
Totally.
everyone has to have a roof over their head, mate, and everyone deserves to have a good, safe, and secure roof over their heads, and it's just pushing it out of reach for
Yeah.
people everywhere, all around the world,
Yeah. Yeah. And I will say, the the thing that, a lot of people, when they start thinking about these things, they almost feel helpless. They're like, oh, this machine is like getting so crazy, so out of hand, like there's no way I can ever do it. But the reality is that now more than ever, people are empowered, and it's easier than ever to have that economic mobility because guess what? Like we are healthier than ever as a population, and there's more opportunities to make money, to like basically change your economic status. I mean, look at you, right? Like you're doing a podcast. Like there's a ton of people making good money in podcasts, and like all it takes is just some dedication. Yes, it's harder than people think. always. I mean,
Yeah,
like everyone wants what everyone has, but there's a reason why only very few people have it is because very few people are willing to do that work,
yeah,
right? But
yeah. Put
now
in
it's
the
so
effort
more
and
than
make the
possible.
sacrifices that need to be made to be able to achieve it.
Exactly, exactly. And it's never too late. I mean, we were just talking before we hit record. I mean, like super commend you to do this, at your age, a lot of people they're just like very set in their ways and they get pessimistic and stuff. But like for you, you're taking a leap and you're doing this and it's great.
Thanks, mate.
You're taking action.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was. It was a bit real leap of faith to start with, to get into it. It was something that I'd thought about for a long time, but had no clue how to go about it. Yeah, and uh, the lucky enough, I went over to Thailand last year and done an 8 day AI seminar over there,
Nice.
and met an American fella over there who was presenting a course on how to do podcasting. So that got into
Hmm.
it with him,
Yeah.
and here we are doing it, and
Wow.
it's I'm really enjoying it and getting to meet heaps of fantastic people like yourself, learning so much myself, and hopefully sharing all of that with the audience, because this
Yeah.
information needs to get out there, and it's such a good way to get it out there. People
Yeah.
can take it in at their leisure whenever they can, at their time, and learn from it and go and try and put it into practice. That's the biggest thing, eh? Like knowledge is power, but ultimately it's nothing unless you put it into practice.
Right. And it's so incredible how quickly your life can change when you just move in that different direction and go one foot after the other. I mean, to you, the listener, right? You're listening, you're hearing these ideas, and how do you put it into action? I think you have to think about that and just be empowered to take it. I mean, life is more fun that way. There is so much to experience in the world, and our time here is so limited, and it's just a blessing to be able to experience and like exchange ideas like this.
For sure, mate, for sure. And I think it's fear that holds most people back from doing anything, eh? I think that fear myself, we all have it. That it's a human condition, mate, And
Yeah.
how do you how do you get overcome that? And one of the best ways I've found is through education and then just having a crack, just like you said, one
Yeah.
foot in front of the other and have a go. But you've got to go and get a
Yeah.
little bit of know-how about how to have a go first, and then
Yeah.
you make your mistakes along the way, and that's how we learn best. And then keep
Right.
improving from there. Keep improving from there.
Yeah.
Can you tell us what's a deal or a decision that looked good on paper but nearly burned you, mate, that you were doing throughout your time in doing this, and what did you
Mm.
miss at the time, and what would you do differently about it
Mm.
now?
Yeah, I think for me it was realizing that my time is valuable.
Sure
When
is.
I got started investing, it was buying, my own properties. I was like running the repairs, talking to people, and it wasn't until much later on that I was like, this is not worth my time at all. I mean, I would rather stick to what I do best. I mean, look, if I was still back at Tesla, like I would just sell more cars and like make more money because that's what I do best. And I would find people that do the thing that they do best and make sure that that's something that helps you, right? For me, I found that investment group that does apartment buildings. So they did it very well, and I trusted them, and I gave my money to them to invest for me, and they made it grow. And I think the magic of who not how, the book by Dan Sullivan, it's always like you have to find the right person, not the right method. Because we all spend our 24 hours differently. We all specialize in different things. We have different strengths and different perspectives. So it's just a matter of figuring out, okay, where do you want to go and who do you need to connect with to make that happen? And once you kind of set that target in your mind, then your mind gets to work instead of like, I can never do that. It's like, how can I do that?
Yeah. Yeah, for sure, and it definitely helps. I've found put it down on paper, eh? Like put what your plan is and what your goals are, what you want to achieve, and when you put it down on the paper, it seems to create a connection in your subconscious mind, and it starts going after it. It finds ways to make it happen for you, instead of you just sitting there thinking about it. And that's all you ever seem
Right.
to do is just think about it and dream about it and wish for it. And yeah, the hoping and wishing doesn't bring anything to fruition, eh?
Exactly. I
For
think
sure.
actually, yes. I mean, it's important to dream, but if you dream too much, it becomes dangerous a little bit. I think that's one of the learnings that I had. You know, when I was younger, I was so ambitious. I still am, but now I learn how to actually achieve things, and that just made the world's difference. And I didn't have this mindset shift through thinking through it. I got it through doing it, through failing, through trying and trying again, through trying different ways, through partnering with different people and like learning these things, through getting burned. And I think the the reality is that on the path to success, you're gonna lose and you're gonna get hurt way more than you think. And that's just a reality. So you'll see like why do athletes make such great businessmen, right? Like people like A-Rod or like whoever, like Tom Brady, whoever,
Yeah.
is because
Yeah.
they learn that pain is just a part of the process and they
Yeah.
work through it.
Yeah. For sure. Well, pain is how we learn, eh? Sadly, and for whatever reason, we try our best to avoid pain and ultimately look for pleasure. But pain is what I believe will get you to the point of pleasure.
Doing the uncomfortable thing. Yeah.
For sure, mate. For sure. You see private equity and everyday investors do their thing. What's the biggest difference in how they approach deals as to pose how everyday people would go about doing it, mate?
Similar to what I mentioned earlier, I think everyday people think that they should do it themselves instead of the institutions. They're always like, who do we put into place? What structure do we use to get to where we want to get to? And that's the difference. And there's a reason why they're able to outperform just regular people, right? I mean, people that are like picking stocks, as opposed to someone who just invests into the mutual funds or in the private markets. It's very different. So the institutions, they're very process driven, whereas the individual is very hustle driven. And the reality is that yes, you need to get there, you need to work up to it. It's not like if you just put that process into place, you're going to get something. There is some degree, like especially when you're getting started, there might be too much process or too many systems, and you just need to do the thing that moves your needle forward, whether that is picking up a phone and making that cold call, right? Everyone hates it, and people make all these plans around it. People are like, I'm going to do this great morning routine. I'm going to go do a sauna. I'm like, no, just pick up the phone.
Yeah, do what you got to do, eh? Yeah, procrastination,
Yeah.
it's a killer for all of us, isn't it? It really is.
Yeah,
A tough one
exactly.
to be able to learn to master. It really is. It's
Yeah.
one I've battled with a lot of my life, like most people, I'm sure. I don't think there's too many of us that don't find it
Yeah.
a real hard one to find a way to push through. And
Yeah.
it's mindset, eh? And developing systems for yourself. If it's something that you really struggle with, to come to
Yeah.
understand yourself. Get to know yourself better and realize that that's a weak point that you got, and
Yeah.
find the systems that you need to put in place to be able to help you overcome that.
And the beauty of entrepreneurship, I call this entrepreneurship because, I sort of built this company from the ground up. We have partners now and like we're doing much better. But it is entrepreneurship is as much about who you become in the process as it is the reward. And I think people, they look at the nice fancy home, the Lamborghini, the Ferrari, and they're like, oh, I want that. But what you truly want is who you become in that process. So I've learned so much about myself. I have up leveled myself in so many different ways and like learned so many different useful skills that, it's funny, not to go off on a tangent, but there's always the story of like, hey, take a wealthy person, like take away all his money and like he'll make it back. And it's so true because I was thinking about this the other day that the skills that I have, the contacts that I have, like it's almost impossible for me to just go down in, call it like the economic ladder, right? Because then I'll just find a way. Like, hey, if for some reason like I go bankrupt, like I'll just call up people. I'll be like, how can I bring value to you? And if I bring value to you, I can get a little bit of it in return, right?
Yeah.
And you kind of just work your way back up.
Yeah, for sure. So it's that networking, that you build over time, and ultimately that knowledge, like you said, everything can be taken away from you, but they can't take away the know-how and the
That's right.
nous that you have gained over time through experience, ultimately through major learning points, through failure along the way. So you
Yeah,
know how to, you can rebuild it again if you lose it all, because they can't
exactly.
take that knowledge away from you.
And it's never too late. You never start from zero. That's something that I learned as well, is that, I think we have this false sense of like, if I fail, I'm going to start from nothing again. Everyone's going to laugh at me. Everyone's going to think this and that. But like the reality is that you start from experience. You learned what to do, what not to do. You've gotten better. You've become a more skilled and more able person through it. And it's literally never too late. We were just talking about this, that life is very long. And right now, like we as society, like the institutions, the gatekeeping, it's really like getting out there. And, slight tangent, but when you think about media, 50 years ago, we used to praise the news anchors, like they used to have so much authority, right?
Yep.
The people in power, like people that you see in movies, like we idolize over them. But now, like media has become so democratized, like anyone can do it. Like I could just pick up my phone and post a video on Instagram, and it's so easy to get your thoughts out to the world. And the algorithms kind of promote this. It's called interest graphs. So like they'll show you what you're interested in. It's kind of like the TikTok algorithm, that really, like your idea, you don't need some big media company backing you anymore. You don't need permission. You can do it yourself anytime right now.
Yep, for sure. Well said, mate. It's so true. Like it's just all the platforms that are out there now, it gives you so much access to the rest of the world, and allows the rest of the world so much access to you. You just got to learn how to interact with it and interface with it to be able to make the most of it.
Yeah.
Been a
Yeah.
big
And,
learning
and
curve for me, because I was never strong in the tech world. I was pretty opposed to it myself for a long time. So, and that was just, not knowing about
yeah.
it and not being involved in it, So
Yeah. Having your preconceived notions, and yeah, I mean, I think it's one thing to learn to set aside your ego and just do it. For me, like I knew like I wasn't good at sales, I wasn't good at talking to people. Screw it. I'm going to attack the bottleneck. I'm going to work in sales at Tesla, right? Or like me, I mean, I taught myself how to code. I failed 3 times. I'm still not good at it. I still don't really know, but I'm probably a 2 out of 10 in terms of skill level, as opposed to 0.
no.
And that's better than nothing. Now with
Yeah,
AI, they make building things so much easier. I know how to logic through things. I could build websites and stuff. And yeah, I think the number of excuses that people have to get what they want is quickly diminishing.
yeah, yeah. But we still manage to, as humans, we still find plenty of ways and more excuses, that we can come up with.
We find
Well,
comfort
we
in it.
can't. We can't. Yeah, instead of finding reasons why we can, we seem to look for them
Yeah.
reasons why we can't, and it's just mindset, eh? That's what I've
Yeah.
found. It's mindset. It
It's the
really
victim
is.
mindset.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
and it's a
You have to
problem. And
believe that. Yeah. You have to believe that you can impact your own life. And
yeah,
that's it.
you are control of your own destiny, eh? There's plenty that's out of your control, but there is still plenty that's in your control.
That's right.
Um, we're starting to run up on time, mate, so I'll punch through a couple of last little quick ones and some short, quick
Yeah.
answers. I don't want to burn up all your time on you, mate. I know you got plenty of other stuff to be
Yeah.
doing. So, for someone listening, Leo, working a job, just average Joe trying to get ahead, mate, what's the most realistic path for them to get into their first deal into real estate, mate? Into
Hmm.
investing along them lines so they can get some passive income.
So it depends on who you are and where you are. So, for us, a lot of people, they're not experienced. Like investing with our team was the first foray into real estate for them. For them, they realize like, hey, they had a good job. They work in finance, they work in the tech space or in the medical field, and they're like, well, I do pretty well in my job. I think I would put more effort into this and then put some funds with this team to make it grow. So some people do it that way. Other people, maybe they don't have the access to it. I think when it comes to deals like this, access is always the key. Um, and also part of why we started this firm is that there just wasn't enough quality opportunities that are accessible to the individual. So, for me, when I was working for the $4.5 billion fund, the minimum investment was $10 million.
Oh, yeah, who's got that? I certainly haven't, that's for sure. And I
Yeah.
know, I guarantee you most of my listeners don't either. But anyway,
It's super inaccessible. So, why we started our firm is we wanted to democratize the access to these high quality investments and do it in a way that actually has social good. For us, like our minimum check size is only 50,000. Yeah, I mean it's much lower than the other firms out there, and we want to keep it that way as long as we can because, we were once in that position. We were like trying to get access to good deals. We just didn't have it.
so again, for people trying to get a start, mate, they obviously need to go and do the research, but to go and pick up the phone or book a time through like a Zoom meeting like we're doing now, mate, and with a firm like yours, and get yourself a bit of education around how it all works, so you can see whether or not it's something that can work for you.
Right. It's not right for everyone, like I said. And, what we try to do is we put out a lot of free educational content. That way you can kind of figure it out. Because, I mean, me being the introvert I am, I didn't want to book a call. I wanted to just like look on websites and look through different articles to see if it's right for me. So that's what we put out. So we have a ton of resources that are out there.
And that's fair enough, mate. And a lot of people are
Yeah.
like that, They don't handle the face-to-face
Yeah.
interactions real well, and
Yeah.
I guess they're probably scared that they're going to feel like they're a dummy going and talking to
Yeah.
somebody who's got a lot of knowledge and know-how around the subject. But as through my learnings, mate, you need to get past that and not worry about what people might what think, and it's more
Yeah.
what you're thinking that people will think,
Yeah.
and just go and have that conversation, get that
Yeah.
information so that you can know, because none of us in life, mate, we don't know what we don't know until you learn it and you get to know it, eh? So there's only one way to
Mhm.
get it, and that's to go out there after it.
Yeah. Absolutely. Very well said.
For sure, for sure. Um, Mate, probably last one here we want to run with before we run out of time.
Sure.
Just trying to pick which one here to question which to hit you up with. Um, there's a lot of talk about passive income, mate, throughout real estate investing and lots of different forms of investing. In your experience, how is passive in real estate actually, and what does it take to build it up, mate? Like
Hmm.
um, going
Yeah.
off, and can someone realistically replace their income with real estate, mate, or is that just a bullshit story that people get sold?
Yeah, so I've replaced my income just with investments, and
That's awesome.
the
Well
the
done.
saying to keep in mind is money loves speed, but wealth loves time. And I think what trips people up is that they just have the wrong expectation of how fast something takes. I mean, it took me years. I mean, I would just say I would make my money at my job, I would save, and then once I had some money, I threw it into investments like this. And then I built a little bit of income and, watched it grow over time. It wasn't like boom, it wasn't super quick. It took like almost 10 years. So
Yeah,
it's not easy, but you can and you have to start now because then the best time to plant a tree is 10 years ago. Second best time is now.
yeah, 100%, mate. Well said. Love them words. So true. And it's been a big learning curve for me too, And but again, depends on where you are in your life, Like the sooner you start, the better, obviously, But it's never too late, Like I interviewed a fella just recently, and he ended up in a really tough situation in life, and got worked in the corporate sector and had a good job, and got laid off at the age of 63. Couldn't get
Yeah.
back into the game, no one wants to know you at that
Yeah.
age, and you apparently got no value anymore. But I think he got heaps myself. But and he
Yeah.
was going to be broke by 65, mate, and so he had to do something. And then in the next 6 years, he turned himself into a millionaire. So
Wow.
it's doable. It's
It's
doable.
still doable and
Yeah.
it's never too late.
Yeah.
That's a prime example. Yeah.
Yeah, no, I tip my hat to him. He done really well, really, really well, and it shows you that you can.
Absolutely.
But obviously, the sooner you get into it in life, the better. So you got a bit of time up your sleeve to make some mistakes, and you can recover from it, and then you can keep charging forward. So you just got to patience, patience.
Yep,
Well
exactly.
and truly patience. All right, Leo, thank you for your time today, mate. It's been a real pleasure having a chat to you. No doubt listeners will have taken away plenty out of this yarn today, mate. Can you tell people where they can find you, mate, and if they want to look into what you do,
Yeah.
mate, and get some of your education?
Absolutely. So there's two ways to reach out. Number one, if you want to learn more about mobile home parks, how our firm will double your investment every 5 years, you can go to our website at cornellcommunities.com. That's CORNELLCOMMUNITIES.com. Or you can reach out to me on LinkedIn. It's Leo Young, LEOYOUNG, or on Instagram at Leo Young Real Estate.
Awesome, mate. That's bloody awesome. Well done. Well, for listeners, have a look into Leo's stuff, mate. Reach out to him and get a bit of his knowledge and know-how and some of his education into your life, and you can start helping making you some better decisions to get into real estate and get some passive income flowing in your life.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Rodney.
Excellent, Leo.
Very happy
Thanks,
to be on.
mate. Have a great day, eh? All right,
Yes.
let's keep on stacking, eh?
This has been another episode of the Rodney Bull Show, a Rebel Edge production. Please share with your family and friends, and don't forget to like, subscribe, and leave a review.